Trump administration weighing more steps to produce more distancing for Americans. Trump administration officials are actively weighing steps that would more explicitly push Americans to distance themselves from one another in a bid to prevent further coronavirus contagion. As the virus continues to spread into more American communities, discussions have accelerated on ways to encourage or require people to remain in place while health officials work to contain the disease. So far, members of the White House's coronavirus task force are split on whether further restrictions like limits on domestic travel or even some type of national lockdown are necessary at the federal level. An internal debate has taken hold on how far to extend mandatory restrictions on travel and movement, with some officials warning that further attempts to limit Americans from traveling domestically could have a dire effect on the economy. Those arguments have been countered by health officials who say drastic measures are needed to flatten the curve or slow the speed of contamination. Speaking on Sunday morning talk shows, Dr. Anthony Fauci, the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, said much more would be required of Americans if the disease is to be stopped or slowed. Asked by CNN's Brianna Kaler on State of the Union if he'd like a national lockdown where people are told they need to stay home and out of restaurants and bars, Fauci said he'd like to see a dramatic diminution of the personal interaction that we see in those places. Whatever it takes to do that, that's what I'd like to see, Fauci said. Inside the White House, his comments raised some eyebrows because there have not yet been serious discussions of a nationwide lockdown. Officials were quick to suggest Fauci was simply saying Americans should heed government warnings and limit their contact with others, not that he endorsed federally mandated rules on interactions. Still, his comments were a sign that officials recognize the steps they have taken so far to encourage Americans to keep to themselves during the public health crisis have fallen short. There has been some early discussion among the coronavirus task force about a national lockdown of some kind, but it is not a step that is being seriously contemplated right now, multiple senior administration officials said on Sunday following Fauci's comments. Still, officials are aware they could come under pressure to take such a step, given lockdowns other countries have enacted in a bid to slow the coronavirus within their borders. Spain was set to become the second European country after Italy to enforce strict isolation measures on Monday. The government there said shops, schools, bars and restaurants would be closed for at least 15 days, and residents have been ordered to remain at home, except to buy food, go to work, get medical care or help elderly people. France has also placed strict new limits on cafes and restaurants. Listen. The Coronavirus Fact vs. Fiction podcast. Already, some American municipalities are putting in place their own new rules that would prevent large gatherings. The governor of Illinois said Sunday he was ordering all bars and restaurants to close to the public beginning Monday night until March 30, and Ohio's governor said he was mandating restaurants and bars close at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. The District of Columbia also enacted new limits on how many people are allowed into restaurants and said businesses must ensure that tables with patrons are separated by at least 6 feet. In New York, officials say there is no plan in place for a citywide shutdown, but the state's governor told CNN that some new restrictions are possible. I could see businesses being closed over a period of time, Governor Andrew Cuomo, a Democrat, told CNN's Wolf Blitzer. I make my decisions based on science and based on data, so these are not political decisions to me. They are data-related decisions. As those numbers continue to go up, do you have to have more and more restrictions? Yes, you do. On Sunday afternoon, Cuomo announced all public schools in New York City, Westchester County, Suffolk County, and Nassau County will close this week in an effort to limit the spread of COVID-19. Inside the White House, officials are seriously looking at how it can encourage more concerted social distancing by all Americans, whether through policy or through more concerted messaging from the administration. But it did not appear Sunday that any new plans were ready to be announced. More. You asked, we're answering. Here's a guide to your top coronavirus questions. The president has suggested that restrictions on domestic travel are possible, though senior administration officials said they didn't expect those to be enacted in the near term. According to an administration official, both Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin and Economic Advisor Larry Kudlow are adamantly against greater travel restrictions, including a nationwide ban, arguing that any further restrictions on the airlines could be catastrophic. They have told the president that people are staying home and practicing social distancing anyway, so the national travel ban would not be beneficial. Nutchin and Kudlow don't want a national edict saying don't fly, this person said, noting that both men had a heated disagreement with medical advisors in the Oval Office earlier this week when restrictions on European travel were being discussed. However, Fossey believes a sweeping ban, while likely to deal a short-term hit to the economy, would help health officials get a handle on the outbreak. We are not there yet, this person said of a nationwide ban. The president wants to keep things open, but he also understands that the faster we get this controlled, the faster we get this over with. Regional travel restrictions have also been discussed for areas where infection rates are high, but this administration official said that they are all far from a reality. Instead, administration officials said it was far more likely that local and state governments enact their own restrictions on large gatherings or social interactions. For now, the White House is largely focused on efforts to scale up testing capacities across the country and to make testing centers Trump previewed on Friday, including in retail parking lots and drive-thrus, a reality. One official conceded the testing centers are still being worked on, but that it will take some time for them to be up and running. After Trump brought executives to the Rose Garden on Friday to announce their participation in the program, the companies offered few details on when they'd have the testing resources to begin. Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law and senior advisor, has been the administration's point person in dealing with many of those companies in order to set up mass testing centers, including Walmart, Target, Walgreens and CVS. There's no guidebook for something like this, the official said, before arguing that the president has been working to create one. CNN's Vivian Salama, Jeremy Diamond, Evan Perez, Barbara Starr, Caitlin Collins and Priscilla Alvarez contributed to this report. Click subscribe to receive the latest news.